Pulsex and Pulsechain are going to be launching very soon. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could take a look at what potential demand might be, not just for the total ecosystem, but for each one individually? Because demand is what drives prices. That is exactly what I did in this video, where we take a look at Google Trends, which is the largest search engine in the world, YouTube, the second largest search engine in the world for Pulsex and Pulsechain, see where things are going, but we also take a look at their website, because people who are going to their website, pulsex.com, pulsechain.com, are more interested than somebody that's just casual, right? So that's an indicator of interest. We also took a look at the number of hashtags used for pulsex.com, or I'm sorry, Pulsex or Pulsechain on Instagram, on TikTok, the number of views on YouTube, plus the number of creators on YouTube. Because when you think about creators, like, it takes time to do these videos. Time and effort and sometimes money for people, right? Like, I just bought a new mic that I'll be getting in a day or two. So we want to understand all these pieces from a more holistic approach so that maybe we can get a better idea of what is actually happening versus the market to make our decisions on. So with that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. By the way, if you're returning, you haven't already pressed that subscribe button and the bell notification, what's up, bro? You should also press that like button. So, when I do research or analysis, I like to understand some things from multiple different angles. If you think of a mosaic, right? If somebody did a mosaic of my face, probably beautiful, first of all, but second of all, it would be like tiny little bits and pieces all put together that if you step back, you get to see the face, but individually may not be super important, or you couldn't tell what it's going to be of. And that's the approach that I took with this video, or the series that we've been doing here, where we look at macro level data from multiple different angles to understand what is actually taking place. Because once we understand the interest and what is going on, that's a piece of data, that's a little bit of information that nobody else has, and allows me to make different decisions than other people because I have different information than other people. So that's good. The first thing we took a look at was the telegram for each one of these to see which one has more, also which one's growing faster. Next, we took a look at YouTube. So in YouTube, we looked at two separate things. And then I put all this together, we're gonna aggregate it into a spreadsheet, and then after we take a look at the spreadsheet, then we're gonna go into the Google Trends analysis, because those charts are super interesting, especially there's a contrast between Google search versus YouTube search in terms of the Pulsex versus Pulsechain. On YouTube, we search for Pulsechain, and then we come down here, we search over the past month and views. I take the top 10 videos here, and I add up the total for Pulsechain, and then I do the same thing for Pulsex. And then for the total number of creators, what we do is we look over the last 24 hours, the video and relevance, right? This way, you get an idea of the people who are involved in the community, where are they spending their time and their money of pushing into the community? Because if we saw anything over the last 2 years, we understand that the people, organizations that control the narrative have the power to influence people, good or bad, right? Look at the last 2.5 years. So understanding where the community is putting out content that thus is going to be viewed, right? That's where we can understand what is happening. So I find these ones always super interesting. We also looked at Instagram, the hashtag usage for Pulsechain versus Pulsex, TikTok, Pulsex versus Pulsechain, Alexa.com. So Alexa.com is an Amazon company. They do data analytics or website data analytics, and they estimate traffic and bounce rate and a bunch of other metrics for websites. And then they rank them relative to all the other websites that they rank. And Pulsex and .com and Pulsechain.com have a world ranking and then one in the United States. So we get those and compare those. It's also kind of interesting to take a look at this chart, right? There was a drop off right at the end of March where it was just coming down, right? And it looks like we may have just come around that corner where it is starting to increase. Could that be because, according to Richard Hart, launch is coming very soon? I don't know. We'll have to play this out and see, but you may not be able to see this on your screen, but yeah, you can. Okay. May 1st, I no longer have access to this, so we added another one. I've used this site before. This is a similar web, kind of a same idea of what they do in terms of estimated traffic and whatnot to a website, bounce rate, page views, etc. And we put in Pulsechain.com, and then we look at their global ranking and in their country, the United States, right? And then we get to compare those. So let's take a look at all that data right now in this spreadsheet. In the gray, right, the gray column here, we have Pulse, and in the white, we have Pulsex. Sounds like a fight. In the gray corner, we have Pulse up against Pulsex in white over here. Let us see how we're gonna do. So this one I found interesting to just take a look at the chart on this one. Let's see if I can pull this up. All right. So you get to see the growth in the terms of these numbers is easier to just see in a chart. Red is Pulsex, and you get to see Pulsex is clearly growing, where Pulsechain is it's growing. It just doesn't look like it's growing nearly as quick as Pulsechain is. I'm sorry, Pulsex is. You can see the gap between these two bars here versus over here. So I figured that was the best way to represent that. And if we just take the difference week over week, because we've been tracking this for a month and a half now, 344 new members in the Pulsechain group since the last time we checked, about 2 weeks ago, and 675 in the Pulsex group. So not quite double the growth rate, but close to double on YouTube. But in this case, this category would be Pulse that has greater amount of attention, but in terms of the growth rate, it's Pulsex. In this category here, oops, I forgot to update this one here. We saw a switch in terms of the total number of views. So when we go back over here, and if I put in Pulsechain, it has to have the Pulse logo in the thumbnail or something to that degree in the title, like Pulse. See how it says Pulsechain here? It would have to say that in there, or PLS or something in the title in order for me to count it. So we're just counting relevant ones, and then we take the top 10 and we add up the views. So Pulsechain had 177 in the top 10,000, right? Versus Pulsex, because this gives us an idea of where people are actually looking. Like, what are they going to be out there watching? Now, one thing that this metric is missing is the long tail, right? We get to see what the most popular people who are putting out content with Pulse or Pulsex, but we don't get to see the long tail, right? Because if you look at a bell curve or something, there's a fat tail, or more, it could be a thinner tail, right, depending on the type of curve you have. And if there's a fat tail, the fat tail could have a tremendous amount, depending on how big it is, right, of information in there. So that's one thing that I don't see. It would be nice if I had a tool that could actually track this or something. That would be kind of interesting on like a 24-hour basis, just regularly track this. But one thing that we can look at to try to get an idea of what the fat tail might be is where, like, the media, but in this case, the media is people on YouTube, right? People on the internet who are talking about, who are putting their energy and their time and their money into creating content around topics. They're going to influence the public who is going to view that content, right? And in this case, it's almost 2 to 1. This is just, remember, this is on here, and this is the last day. So this is just 24 hours. Over the last 24 hours, there was 50 videos released with Pulse in the title or the thumbnail in some way, shape, or form, and 28 for Pulsex. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's also a big increase. It was holding steady, and then they had a big increase, 19 new videos over a 24-hour period. Like, this is the most, if you look at this entire time period, Pulse has had the highest since we started tracking this. This is interesting, right? This is very interesting. I'm just noticing this now. They're a big increase. We also saw an increase for Pulsex, the third highest since we started tracking, right? We have 28 here, 31 and 36. There's 28 videos created. This is very, very interesting how much of an increase there was with Pulse. I found that very interesting. Okay, next is Instagram. Instagram hashtag usage, right? I was going to try to say something funny about my hashtag, but I don't have one out there. So if you want to create one, and you can tag me on Twitter, there's a link down below. I have a little contest going with my buddy, and I'm trying to actually beat him over the next 90 days. So if you want to help me beat him, go to the Twitter, say what's good, and press the follow button. I'm pretty active over there as well, daily, multiple times a day. So if that's pretty active, then yes. We get to see that on Instagram, there was a bigger increase in hashtag usage for Pulsechain than there was for Pulsex, which is interesting because Pulsex actually has more hashtag usage than Instagram does. Although, when I started looking into this, it seems like there's a lot more noise. Not necessarily a lot more noise, but just more noise in the Pulsex. Right? If we come over here, you can Pulsechain, right? But people can post all sorts of shit that is not related to this, right? I don't know if there's anything up there, right? Like something like this. Well, this is from somebody probably in the crypto community, right? And they use this, but this doesn't really say anything about it. Day one, I introduced my wife to my crypto friends. Hex and Pulsechain, right? That's what this one says here, right? But not, it's just the hashtag usage. So there's going to be a lot of cloudiness or like fogginess in here where it's not really related to it. So it is interesting to see that there's, more usage coming out for Pulsechain than there is Pulsex, because it wasn't the case. If you look at this week over week, actually I think I copied the data twice here, it looks like. I think this is a copy when I was doing this. Whoops. Well, I'll fix that afterwards because it's the same amount. It's not going to change these numbers at all. Well, that the change from 475 right here to this wasn't as big as it was from here to here. So the growth rate is actually picking up. Will more people be talking about Instagram and creating it even greater? I don't know. This is kind of interesting. When you look at, like, say, Nonex.com, and you look at the cryptos here, right, the top 20 cryptos, and you talk to any of your friends in crypto, if you run through this list of the top 10 cryptos, like, I was not in crypto 60 days ago, roughly. I knew about crypto, like, like people say they know about fitness, and they don't know about fitness. But, right, like that type of idea. I knew, like, I had heard of, say, Sheeb. I may have heard of AVAX, Polkadot, Doge, NotX, ADA, possibly Luna, XRP, Solana, and maybe Binance. I'd heard of Binance, but I didn't know about their token, right? So I'd heard of USDC. So I've heard of, like, maybe half of the top 20, but I've never heard of Hex, right? and that's in the top. And there's a lot of people who have never heard of Hex, even though the community is very, very strong. The price for performance is very, very strong, right? Like it's awesome, but there's just not a lot of people who have heard of it, and that's like tremendous upside to that. That's gonna be insane when the people start fucking paying attention to reality. When we look at TikTok, we see 600,000 additional views since the last time we checked this, which is kind of interesting because this is something that Richard Hart actually just highlighted, that he got in touch with somebody with 20 million different subscribers through TikTok. Somebody found him on actually TikTok. And Pulsex had a 0.5 or 500,000 view increase since the last time we checked it. That was kind of interesting. When we look at their websites, so these are growing at a similar rate, right? When we look at the websites, we see that this is the world, right? And then we have Pulse on the left and Pulsex. We get to see that over the last 3 weeks, Pulsex has stayed about the same, but it's been trending down. So not as popular, right? But when we looked at this data, we can see that, right? It's been getting fucking worse. In the United States, Pulsex is just dominating. Like it's in the top, and remember, there's millions and millions and millions and millions of websites, right? And Pulsex and Pulse are in the top 20,000. Pulsechain is far more popular, but that could also be because the testnet, right? You would think people are using the testnet potentially, so that might be why that is the case, but I'm not exactly sure here. When we use SimilarWeb, that's this site similar to the other Alexa site, but just they have their own estimates, right? Because these are just estimates. They rank Pulse 83,000th and Pulsex more popular. So this is it's the same here in terms of more popular. It's just the ranking the placement is a little bit off. Or well, one of them is closer to reality than the other one is. We just don't know unless Richard wants to share some of the analytics. In terms of the United States, they're almost the same. They're off by 500 spots. We like this is a lot of information here, and I'm like, damn, what is going on here? I do see an upward trend because once you're looking at this data consistently, you can kind of pick up on things that maybe I forget or I'm not articulating enough to put through in the video. But one thing that I have noticed is a increase in the excitement, or people like just being out there more, or at least that's what it seems like relative to Pulse. And we get to see, like right here, obviously there's not as popular as Pulsex, growing. It's decreasing its number of views, but this is astonishing in terms of the number of creators creating content on that, and Instagram. So I'm not sure where I'm getting that sense from, but that's the sense that I was getting. Let's take a look at the Google Trends here. This is Pulse. This is Google Trends. This, second or the first largest, the largest search engine in the world. And then we're also going to look at YouTube in a moment. Globally, over the last 12 months, Pulsechain Pulsex. Not too much to see here other than Pulsex has dropped down. What I find interesting to take a look at when I look at these is 12 months, and then I'll look at 90 days. We get to see here that this is actually almost trending down, which is kind of interesting. Like Pulsex was trending down for 45 days, then had a pop right around here, which was March 20th, 19th, 20th. I wonder what happened around that. You guys can let me know in the comments. And then seems to have a trend downwards again. Both of them do on Google, which is different data than we're going to see on YouTube, right? These are massive, massive, massive amounts of data here. If you have heard of Google or YouTube, then you know they're that way because they sell advertising based upon what we're looking at, the search interest of people. So people are searching for shit, right? That gives people an idea of their intent of their person to market to that person. When we look at the same search over the last 30 days, it looks again downward trending with a possible direction change for here for Pulsex. But we see it like just started to creep back up. It looks like in the today or the last data point that is dropping. Now this looks completely different when we look at YouTube search volume. Check this out. Look at this. So kind of from about mid-February, right? That was right before Pulsex sacrifice ended. We see a upward trend for Pulse. Just an upward, like to the, that's exactly what you want. That's interesting. And then Pulsex is doing the same type of thing, but Pulsex had a big spike here, almost as high as, this is probably around the same, this is the 20th of March. So I wonder what happened in that week. You guys know what happened in the 20th through the 26th of March? Like what would have caused that substantial increase? And was that, did Richard say like, oh, it should be out? No, that was in March. I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments. So I found this interesting. And then when you like take a look at the last 90 days, it doesn't look like much except for that the interest for Pulsex was much higher the first 45 days. And over this last 45 days, they've actually closed that gap, right? Pulsex is still on average more search volume, but they have closed the gap here. So what is my take on this? Like, what do I think is potentially going to take place? Oh man, well, obviously I had no fucking idea, but with what we see happening in Hex, right? There's been a run up in Hex the last several days. I think that people are pulling their money from other ERC20s to put it into Hex. Well, we'll do a separate video on that portion of it, but I think that it's going to be very, very, very volatile for the first couple weeks or couple months as this launches. I am very bullish on both of these. If I had to pick one, I would say near term, maybe Pulse. Longer term, maybe Pulsex. For various reasons we can get into in a separate video. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this information in the video, as well as where you think Pulsex or Pulses, how they're going to be performing over the next, say, rest of the year and 3 to 6 months type thing. Appreciate you guys. Oh, by the way, don't forget to check out Twitter down below or the other YouTube channel, which there'll be a link up here somewhere. It comes up on the screen. Just click it. Check out that channel. It's all fitness related shit. And my Instagram. If you want to support, there's also some links down below. Appreciate you. One of the people who watch was who actually helped me purchase the microphone. So if you're watching this, thank you. If anybody else wants to help support, please let me know. Not saying if you don't have enough money, you should spend the money on yourself and invest in yourself, right? But appreciate you.